back. This is Lauren Kimball for ANI 150, and we're going to go ahead and model this axe now. Before we do, make sure you go File and Save Your Scene. This is just how I do it. I just type in the prefix being whatever it is I'm modeling, then a numerical number, followed by a little note in the suffix, just so I remember what's there. You don't have to do it this way. You could do increment and save. You could do auto save. You could name it based on whatever, but I like doing it this way just to stay organized. So after I've saved my step, I'm going to go ahead and begin thinking about how I want to model this. So there is a saying that one of my friends who's in martial arts told me, and that's that there is no such thing as advanced moves, only better basics. Why am I saying that? Because if I were going to be drawing this axe, like in pencil, I would instantly be thinking about simple shapes. If you think back to art school, or maybe you didn't go to art school, maybe you coming out of high school, the art class you may have taken there, ideally the teacher would have talked to you about breaking things down into their simple shapes. No matter how complex the item, or the person, or whatever it is that you're drawing, everything can be broken down into simple shapes. No matter how advanced it is, even if you're doing something in 3D as opposed to pencil, even if you're creating something super complex as opposed to something like an axe, everything is simple shapes. So let's look at this and think about what simple shapes we're seeing. Off the cuff, what's really obvious is the handle. The handle's a cylinder, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and create a cylinder. Let's start by going into shading and activating the X-ray. So X-ray will allow me to look through my mesh so that I can still see like a little bit of the Lambert and the wireframe, but I can also see my reference image behind it without losing a sense of where my model is. I'm going to go ahead and just stretch this up on the y-axis using my scale tool. Looks good. And then I'll press spacebar so that I can see my perspective view and my side view simultaneously. And I can look at my scale tool, and there's this green square. This green square will control both the X and the Z axes simultaneously without affecting the Y. So when I grab it, notice that it doesn't become shorter, but it does become more narrow. Let's go back to the side view, use the move tool, and align this handle as best we can. Looks pretty close. I might move it a smidge more. Yeah, that works. All right, so we've got this cylinder, and we've gone ahead and we've matched it to our picture. I'd say we are pretty much ready to go. When I think about axes I've seen in real life, though, I've noticed that the handles tend to be narrower so that a human can get their hands around it. This wide circular cylinder isn't going to cut it. So I'm going to actually grab this and scale it inwards a little bit, like I would see on a regular axe. Now we have to use some artistic liberty because we can't see the front of this axe from this image. And that's gonna happen to you sometimes. Sometimes you're going to be given some images to model by a client, and you only have one picture to go off of. Ideally, we'd have a front view, a side view, and a top view of an item. But in this case, we just have the one image. So we're just going to think creatively as far as what it must look like from the front and get some visual cues from over here. So it was pretty simple. Little low poly handle. I'm going to go ahead and delete history. I'm going to freeze transformations, and I'm going to name this axe arm. And then what I'll do is I'll put this in its own layer. Display layer, just call it axe arm layer, and save that. And now we're done with that. It's a super simple step, so I'm probably not going to bother saving at this point. I mean, if you want to, let's just go ahead. Good habits, right? Even though it's a little silly because all we do is create a cylinder. There we go, handle. So let's go ahead now that we have this handle and create the head of the axe. I am going to turn off the axe handle, and I'm going to think about this axe, like what kind of simple shapes do I see looking at this axe? And the first thing that comes to mind is a cube. A cube is what I see, because I'm looking right here at where the axe head is sitting with the handle. I see the sharp edges, and I'm thinking if I started with a cube, I could extrude on either side to make the rest of the axe. So let's go ahead and start with a square. Now, I know some of you in class, for the students of mine who are watching this video, have talked to me about using the Create Polygon tool. You could totally do that. The problem I have with the Create Polygon tool is that it creates lots of n-gons. N-gons being polygon faces that have more than 3 or 4 sides. And then there are a handful of modelers I've seen online who will model with n-gons, but generally speaking, n-gons aren't great. You want to try to work in quads or tris because that's what most game engines can utilize, and you're not going to end up with any strange artifacting or any sort of weird error if you keep it with quads and tris. All right, so now that I've got this looking really good from the side view as far as just this initial square shape, remember that we are working in 3 dimensions, so it's not enough just to have this set up and looking good in the side view. I need it looking good in the perspective view too, because oh my goodness, look how thick that head is going to be. So I'm going to turn on my axe, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the axe head, and I'm going to shrink it down. So it wraps around the handle, but it's not like way out there. And then go ahead and turn the axe arm back off. All right, cool. So now that we have this, I'm looking at my reference image and I notice this dark gray off to the left. That dark gray indicates that this is dipping inward. Like it's thick here around the handle, but as it goes out, it is dipping inward. So I'm going to go to, sorry for my cough again. I'm going to right click, grab face, and I'm going to grab the face to the left side that's facing the main axe head, the main part where the blade is. I'm going to grab my move tool, I'm going to hold down shift, and that is going to extrude. Go ahead and let go of shift, because if you hold on to shift, then every time you grab this move tool, it's going to extrude again and again and again. We don't need that. Just hold it down once. Once you start moving, you can let go. All right? So I'm going to just kind of bring this out until I start seeing that shadow fade, maybe about right here. That looks right. Go back to my perspective view, and I'm going to narrow this in to how far I think the axe will probably narrow to. Okay? Again, we got to kind of use our best guess because we don't see the front or side of this. I'm then going to go to vertex mode and just have the general vertexes align with our axe. Yeah, kind of take the shape there. Let's go back in and grab this face, and let's extrude to the point where the blade tips are at. So you'll see that there's a blade tip right up here, and there's one down here. All right, looks good. From here, let's go ahead and throw in some edge loops. Yeah, because I don't think I want to necessarily keep extruding smaller and smaller until we get to this point. I think instead what I want to do is use some horizontal edge loops. Let's go ahead and, I mean, it's really just a judgment call. You could just keep extruding to the left and just have smaller and smaller boxes as you go. But I think what I want to do is use my insert edge loop tool. I'm going to go to this little side box here. I can reset my tool. You don't always have to reset it if you know what you want it to be on. I just reset it to match whatever you guys are or have your tool set to. I'm going to go over here and activate the multiple edge loops, and let's go with 3. Let's go with 3 for a start. So I'm just going to activate 3, and I'm going to go in and move these vertices so that they match the shape of the axe head a little bit more. Not to be perfect, just kind of getting a general sense of the shape. Okay. And then let's go ahead and add just 1 in this time for like right here. Just that just those vertices. Down, over. Do that again here. Yeah. Kind of getting the nice axe shape going on there. It looks pretty decent for a low poly. Before we get too much further with that part of the axe, let's go over here and address this side. I'm going to go ahead and grab these top 4, and I'm going to lower this down so that the width of this first edge here is matching the width of this part we're going to extrude from. Do the same over here. Cool. Now I'm going to grab the face that marks the top and the bottom of this pointy bit. Hold down Shift and extrude. Now when I get this taper, I could, let's see, there's a couple ways I could do this. I think it kind of stays chunky, like kind of right here, and then dips again. Like it's not like a super fine point. It has a little bit of a curve to it. So I'm going to actually have 2 extrusions. But if I were to start scaling the tips down, like I just wanted these boxes to come to a point, and I use the scale tool, look what happens. Yeah, it makes a point, but it also brings those 2 tips together. So obviously we're not going to be able to use the scale tool to universally scale these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press undo. So I went back on the extrude I made. And I'm going to shift right click and actually use the extrude tool. So notice that when I click extrude, this tool pops up. It's got the scale, it's got the move, it's got the rotate. I'm going to grab this blue arrow, move this to the point that it matches our reference image. And then I'm going to click on one of these scale boxes. When I do that, it activates the scale tool as opposed to the move tool part of this extrude tool. And I'm going to grab the little blue square so that I'm only messing with two of the axes here. And then watch what happens. When I bring this in, it shrinks the other one, but keeps that distance, which is really nice. So I may go in and refine this. I might go into the vertex mode and just move these so that they align a little bit more with the reference image. I think this might be a little too high. Let's bring that in a little lower. Let's bring this up a little bit. And let's bring this down a little bit. You know, just kind of matching that general shape with our axe. And so I think we got a pretty solid little low poly going here. I could maybe go in and add a little bit more in the way of details, like maybe I could go in here and add another edge loop. Maybe instead of having such an even, oh, sorry for the noise, puppy is still playing with her bone. Maybe instead of having such a dramatic like ramp here down to the blade, maybe we could just cause a nice swoop here. Make sure that those are matching the edges of our axe as well. Like I feel like this could be up a little higher and this could be down a little lower. Maybe not. Maybe it should stay kind of the same up here. I don't know. It's kind of your call. Yeah, just add a little extra there. Maybe do that again here. Maybe add another edge loop and just make some adjustments so that it's just really nice and curved. And then let's do that one more time right here. How much you do really depends on your polygon budget. Generally speaking, and I think I made mention of this before, you usually want to build the high poly first and then retopologize the low poly, working a little backwards here just for the sake of time, just kind of knocking out the low poly first. All right. Another kind of fun thing here that I might want to entertain is I will wager that this last edge loop right here where the blade is kind of this whitish color, I'll bet you that would be probably a really good place to just add even more sorry, sometimes it's hard to model and talk at the same time. Give me just a second. So I'm just kind of lining this up with the edge of the sword a bit because I could imagine here to here being even flatter because we're coming to the blade. Yeah, something like that. Maybe just adjusting this a little bit. Yeah. So now we got this narrow bit, but we also have it feeling a little bit more like a sharpened edge at the edge. Maybe even go a little further with it. I don't want it to be like perfectly pointy, but I do want there to be, you know, pretty narrow edge where the blade is actually going to be at. Okay. And I probably could stand to add a little bit more in the way of tessellation here, but I want to be a little careful that I don't have so many edge loops here that I'm starting to kind of crowd this area. But, you know, let's just, well, let's see what happens. I'll go ahead and add like maybe an edge loop here, edge loop here. Kind of just refining this a little bit. Looks like in our scene we have about 140 faces. This is really got a ton of allowance left, so we totally could keep going with this a little bit further. We got to be careful though, because having all these edges so close to each other here, when we smooth it, it's just actually it's not an undesirable effect, because that is a very rigid area, but still got to be a little careful there. Ah, sorry, pushing the wrong hotkeys. Sorry, it bugs me to see all these edges so close together. All right, so I mean, I'm liking it. I could go maybe a little further even now. Like, what if we put one here and one here? So again, you don't have to necessarily follow along perfectly with me. It's just I'm just sort of spitballing and playing around and seeing what I kind of come up with. And my keyboard battery is almost out, so the hotkey I think that's why hotkeys are sticking. Yeah, I mean it's still got some sharp edges on it. I think part of that has to do with the surface normals. But I mean, I'm pretty much okay with this as far as a low poly. So I'm going to, now, so if the surface normals bother you, a thing that you can do is just go in and, you know, soften harden in there. It's actually still kind of pretty jaggedy right there. Do I care though? I don't think I care right now. I probably will care more on the high poly, but for the low poly, I think it's fine. So there's my axe head, and there's my handle. I'm going to go ahead and delete history, freeze transformations, name this axe head. For this rope area, I mean, I think the easiest thing to do would be to sculpt it or maybe force a texture on it. I'd have to think about what I'd want to do for that. But for right now, this is sufficient for the axe itself. We can address the rope in the next tutorial.